What is up, everybody? Wow, it's kind of been a while, hasn't it? I'm really sorry for getting back into this. I think it's been like a month, but I have some explaining to do. So, first off, I went out of state for the holidays, and then me and my family got sick. It was really weird because my mom tested positive for COVID, and then I tested and it came back negative. So I don't know what we had, but it was a rough couple of days and we all got it quickly. So whatever it was very contagious. And then right after the holidays, of course, my birthday, I celebrated turning 27, which was a lot of fun. And also on my birthday, I started a 3-week accelerated course for college. That way I could take more classes in the regular session. And I just finished that today. So I have been extremely busy. I've been trying to put out an episode, but it's just been impossible with school. Like, I have to get that done. So hopefully all of the craziness has kind of will slow down and I can get back to this. I'm going to try my best, just like always. So, I missed you guys so much. And I thought that since we are coming into the new year, what is a better way than to say, New Year, New Me? Right? I know people always say that. They always make New Year's resolutions. And people have a really hard time with sticking with them. And we make a lot of jokes about it, like, people are gonna hit the gym more and then like after a couple weeks that they just stop. And there is a lot of psychology behind goal setting and motivation, and there's a lot that goes on in the brain when this occurs. And so I figured that today we will talk about New Year's resolutions, goals in general, what goes on in the brain, how to make habits out of things, how the brain actually works, so we can kind of understand what we need to do to make starting something new an actual habit. And also I'll give my own tips that help me with goal setting, and some of it is personal and some of it is psychologically backed by science, but some of it you just have to know what works for you. And yeah, I don't know how else to go into this. So I am your host, Katie Gonzalez, and you are listening to What the Psychology. Okay.
Happy New Year!
Man, I have been at this for I think 7 or 8 months now, which is pretty cool. And I'm so happy that you guys have stuck with me, those that are still like waiting for me to put something out. And like I said, I apologize, but life has been crazy. And now that the holidays have passed, I'm hoping that things kind of go back to normal. So, looking into this, I have done a lot of research and I have found some conflicting information when it comes to what type of goals we should set. Like, some research says that we should be committed to an ambitious goal, and then others say we need something that's easy to hard type of goal. So I really don't know what exactly is best, and I don't know which science is the most up to date, but I'm going to kind of give you both. And I would say maybe just do both, really. I would make some ambitious goals and then some that are simple, but I'm going to get more into that. So, New Year's resolutions and goals. So, the part of your brain that creates emotion, which is called your amygdala, it evaluates the degree to which the goal is important to you. Then secondly, that part of your brain that does the problem solving, which is your frontal lobe, that defines the specifics of what the goal entails. And then lastly, both the amygdala and the frontal lobe, they kind of work together and they keep you focused on and moving toward situations and behaviors that lead to the achievement of that goal. So while simultaneously causing you to ignore and avoid situations and behaviors that don't. So Kind of weird though, but that's kind of a brief explanation of how our brain works when we go into goals in general, when we start to think about them, and then when we start to problem solve of how we can meet those goals, and then how parts of the brain they work together to keep you focused on that goal and how to achieve it, and things to avoid to prohibit you failing, those kind of things. Another fact that I found, I believe, let me see, I found this on Inc.com, so incorporated.com, is that if you strongly desire a goal, your brain will perceive obstacles as less significant than they might otherwise appear. It's kind of like your brain is just sort of like in a, I wouldn't say fear response, but you know how we've talked about panic and fear and how your body reacts to that? In the sense of desiring a goal, your brain kind of perceives as that's something that you can do, and that any obstacles, it's just kind of like they're nothing. Like your brain communicates to your body that you really can do this, and that obstacles that before you desired a goal, instead of them being significant obstacles, now your brain's saying, no, you can do this. They're less significant. So, in a sense of desiring a goal, and strongly desiring it, it's kind of helpful to yourself. Which sounds really weird and kind of sounds like common sense, but this is what science is saying. So, and I guess we could have hindsight bias and be like, well, yeah, everyone knows that, but they have actually proven that that works. It's kind of like your brain is hypersensitive to what you want, in a sense. So there was actually a study published in the Journal of Applied Psychology, and it found that people who committed to an ambitious goal, in the case of the study, they said reducing energy consumption by 20%, it actually ended up saving energy. They actually met their goal. But people who committed to an easier goal, so if they reduced consumption by 5%, they ended up consuming the same amount as before. And so this also reiterates what your brain does too. So if you want to fully activate your amygdala and the frontal lobe so that they work together and make sure that you're successful, you must set challenging goals. Also, another note about the amygdala, I know we talked about emotions, but it also is tied to like our memories, reward processing, and decision making. All of those things are important when we are trying to meet our goals. When it is stimulated electrically, naturally we are aggressive and show aggressive behavior. But when the amygdala is removed, they no longer show aggressive behavior. So really weird. The frontal lobe is in charge of judgment. It controls important cognitive skills. So like decision making, judgment. And it's also an emotional expression, problem solving, language, sexual behaviors. And what is more importantly that I kind of want to briefly talk about here is part of the frontal lobe is the prefrontal cortex. Now, this part of our brain, it doesn't even fully develop until we are like in our 20s, 30s. Some psychologists or neuroscientists say that it develops in our mid-20s. Some even say up until our 30s. So the executive functions of this part of the brain is planning, insight, foresight, and many basic aspects of our personality. And so teenagers aren't fully developed in their prefrontal cortex. That's why we say that they make so many decisions without the proper insight. And it's true, that is part of it. So in 90% of the studies, specific and challenging goals led to higher performance than easy goals. So their advice, according to this science, is do your best goals or no goals. Because goals, they affect performance by directing attention, mobilizing effort, increasing persistence, and motivating strategy development. So goal setting is actually more likely to improve task performance when the goals are specific and sufficiently challenged. Now, I have read in other studies that they say make easy goals, but I think there's a way to kind of do both, and that's going to go into my advice about what I'm going to say later. Because one of the strategies that I use is making goals within goals within goals, but we'll talk about that later. So one thing that I did learn in the military is something called SMART goals, and it kind of helps you. It's an acronym, and it helps you come up with really good goals. But I actually recently learned this that George T. Doran actually coined this rule in 1981 when he was doing a management research paper of the Washington Power Company. And this is by far now one of the most popular propositions of the psychology of goals. Even in the military, we use this. So, SMART, it's an acronym. It stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. We're going to break this down a little bit. So, specific, you want to target a particular area of functioning and focus on building it. So, if we talk about what is a goal that I want to do, say that we'll use me for an instance that I want to lose weight. Okay, but we can't stop there. Now we need to measure it. This is the results can be gauged quantitatively or at least indicated by some qualitative attributes. This not only helps you in monitoring the progress of your goal, but also executing it. If you have no number behind that or no area, then it's really hard to tell if you're actually meeting the goals. So just saying, oh, I want to get back in the gym or, oh, I want to lose weight, those aren't really good enough. I mean, they're great, but that's kind of easy and then you're easy to fall. Now, if you say that I want to be a certain weight by such date, then that might be good. Or I want to lose 50 pounds or 20 pounds or whatever. I think currently for me, my goal is I want to lose 30 pounds by graduation. So, and I think that's pretty easy because that's right now we're in January, February, March. That's 4 months. So,
That's kind of attainable.
which is the next one? Is it attainable or achievable? So, goals are targeted to suitable people and are individualized. So, this takes into the account that the fact that no single rule suits everyone and all are flexible in that regard. My goal may not be achievable in the sense of someone else. If my husband says that he's going to lose like 50 pounds by May, he could probably do it because he has a faster metabolism. For me, that's probably not attainable and not healthy. So it really just depends. Or you want so much body mass, or it doesn't even have to be about that. So for me, one of my goals is to graduate with the highest honors, summa cum laude, for when I graduate in May. That is a goal that I've had from the beginning when I started school. And right now I have like a 3.94 GPA. And so as long as I get all A's or all A's and a B or something like that this semester, the last semester, I will meet that goal. So is that attainable, right? The next one is realistic. I kind of talked about that already, but we have to think of, are these goals practical and are they planned in a way that would be easy to implement in real life? Because the whole purpose of a SMART goal is not just providing the plan, but also being able to execute it. So kind of planning out how you're going to do it is kind of a smarter way of keeping yourself accountable and knowing how you can execute it. And the last one, T, is time bound. I know I've kind of already talked about that, but an element of time makes the goal more focused. It also provides a time frame about task achievement. So if I say by May 14th I want to lose 30 pounds, I can measure that. I can measure that week by week. I can see how much pounds I'm losing per week. It's realistic, it's specific, is it attainable, and it's time bound. If I say I want to graduate with the highest honors, that is kind of time bound because it's by graduation. Is it realistic? Yes. Is it specific and measurable? Measurable, yeah, because I have to get a certain GPA. So, yeah, this is the best way to do goals. I know it sounds kind of tedious, but once you kind of reiterate this into your mind, then you kind of are able to talk it through a lot easier. Like you go through these steps automatically in your mind once you get used to it. So, what are some things that are going to be successful when you're goal setting? So, one of the first things is to make a plan. Make a brilliant plan. So, going by doing the SMART goals, that's kind of part of it. You want to try to chalk out our goals by our greatest strengths. our aspirations, and then you want to find a way to build a plan that's going to work for you. And this also makes it easier to make habit formation easier. And that's where we can focus on implementing the actions that we want to take. And we'll talk about habit formation here in a little bit as well. Kind of the second thing is explore your resources. So the more we educate ourselves about goal setting and its benefits, some of them I gave you earlier. Well, no, I haven't really given you benefits, but when your brain works together the way it does when you're setting goals, it actually helps your brain. So that's a benefit straight out the bat. Now, the easier it comes to us for sticking to our goals, the easier it is to become a habit. And we can start building our knowledge base by taking expert advice, talking to supervisors about workplace, or participating in self-assessments, whatever resources we need to help with our goals. So if it's a goal about losing weight, I remember being told this, I can't give you the source, but 80% of losing weight is actually your diet and 20% is exercise. That's a big deal. And then you can go into more things like with losing weight. You can talk about like what foods you need to eat to get nutrition. Do you need to take supplements? There's so much that you can explore for resources to find out what you need to do to create those goals. If we're talking about school and getting the highest honors, okay, well then we can look up things to manage our time in the best way. What are some good study habits? There's a lot you can look into to educate yourself. Instead of say, oh, I'm going to go to the gym and lose weight, and then you get to the gym and you feel kind of petrified by looking at everyone that's fit around you. Another resource could be a friend that goes to a gym a lot, and they can be your person, your partner. They can encourage you, and they can tell you, well, I was once where you were. I had no idea how to do any of this. So, I mean, sometimes having a support person is a resource. And that kind of goes into like the next step, being accountable. So, a very, very big part of goal setting is accountability. We do tend to perform better when someone is watching over us. You know, it's easier to cheat on a diet or skip the gym when we are doing it alone. And I have kind of an accountability person who I never intended to be an accountability person when it comes to losing weight, and that's my husband. And he tells me a lot if he catches me eating something that I shouldn't, or if I tell him I'm going out to eat with a friend, he always reminds me, make good choices. Remember, you're trying to lose weight. So it's always okay. I have someone that's kind of watching what I eat and watching my gym habits that I'm accountable to. And it helps in our chances to sticking to our goals and succeeding at them. And one thing about goals and habits, creating habits, they can be really hard at first. I know when I first started to eat better and go to the gym, it was so hard. And like I had sugar cravings at night and I could not shake those. And I got advice that instead of reaching for bad sugary things at night to carve your cravings, to go and grab like fruit. And that has helped until like I got through the cravings. It's really hard at first. There's nothing easy about creating goals, losing weight. It is hard. And we can acknowledge that. But if we have like an accountability partner or someone that can kind of keep us in check or help us along the way or support us, that will help us be more successful. Another good step is using rewards and feedback. So rewarding ourselves for our efforts and achievements, they make sticking to the plan more comfortable for ourselves. Also feedback. If we have accountability, someone tell us that, oh, we're doing a great job and they've noticed, or my husband tells me, oh, I can really tell you've lost weight. And that's really good to hear, and it really motivates you to kind of keep going. Rewards, you can have like, you can reward yourself. Like, some people say a cheat day, but I'm thinking more of the aspects of go do a hobby you like instead of like take a day off and just de-stress. For me, I go on motorcycle rides when the weather isn't cold, or I schedule myself for a massage. There's so many things that you can do to reward yourself for meeting your goals. Now, how is goal setting used in psychology? Because setting goals give our mind the power to imagine our ideal future the way we want to see ourselves in years to come or months to come, whatever, when we gain insight into our wants and our needs, we become more aware of our reality and we can set better expectations for ourselves. Now, what's crazy is goal setting, it can impact both intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And I'll explain what those mean. Now, intrinsic motivation, I'm definitely intrinsic motivated for the most part, which means a lot of the motivation comes from in yourself. Like you just want to do good to be proud, or you want to do good to show that you're a hard worker. Extrinsic motivation is more of motivated by rewards or being recognized and those type of things. And this is why it is important to make a goal setting plan according to yourself and no one else. Because if you're extrinsic motivated, those awards, kind of like what I said of giving yourself a de-stress day or doing a hobby or rewarding yourself on a road trip or something, or you're going to go to another city and just have a nice retreat hotel, whatever. Those are very highly extrinsic motivated things. For intrinsic, it's just, are we doing well and are we working hard? And we kind of are motivated by seeing our result. And there's a way of doing that too. You can record your results and really see. Or if you look in the mirror now, do you feel better? Are you feeling healthier? Depending on how you're motivated, depends on what you need to do for yourself, how you need to set your goal. A lot of people don't realize that, and I believe there's like quizzes you can take to see which one you're more of, but it's more of what motivates you more. Is it, like I said, is it awards, recognition, or is it mostly doing a good job? I believe we all have a little bit of both, but one seems to be more than the other, so you can go based on that. And you can also look up more specific definitions about that too, but that's basically like the simple way of defining those terms. So some examples of why goal setting is important. So if you go to school like me, you know that setting clear goals makes it easier for you to realize your strengths and work on building them. Not only does it boost self-confidence, it also is a broader target in life. Goal setting is also a very personal habit, and it's very beneficial to hold ourselves in perspective. When we do goal setting, it could be as simple as maintaining a daily to-do list or planning our career moves beforehand, because then we have like a clearer version of the end goals, and it becomes easier for us to advance towards them, but it's also beneficial to make a solid plan. I know I've been in places where they ask, what are your goals in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Or 10 years? Or whatever. And it's kind of really weird to look at things that way, but it's also important. Where do you want to be in 5 years? I know for me, in 5 years, by that time, I'm hoping that I'll have my master's and I'll be licensed, and then I want to start a family. I can go off of that and then start making plans to do that. Okay, when it comes to getting my master's, well, first thing, I have to get accepted into the program, which I've been working really hard at now. What are all the things I need to submit to that? Once I get in, then what? Okay, well, maybe I need to work on my time management skills. And what are some things that are going to make me successful? Maybe I should find mentors that are already in that profession. Okay, and once I get my master's, now I have to get my license and I have to take a big old test. Okay, so now I need to study for the test. And then once I get settled in with the occupation, well, now I want to start a family. Okay, well, now I have to get on birth control and start planning and start trying. There are ways you can look at the things that you want, even in 5 years, 10 years, and plan those out. Yeah, pretty much. In psychology, there are 3 main goals. So the first one is process goals. So these are the ones that involve the execution of plans. For example, this is like going to the gym in the morning or taking health supplements on time. This could be taking your medication at a certain time of the day. And then you repeat that same action every day, and then it becomes like a habit. And that leads to achievement. So that's like a process goal. Number 2 is like the performance goals. So these goals help track our progress. They give us a reason to continue what we're working towards. For example, if we decide to study for no less than 6 hours a day or working out for at least 30 minutes per day, that can help us in quantifying our efforts and measuring in the process. This is kind of like what I'm talking about, goals within goals, which is going to be my advice later. And it's so great that it's like backed by psychology, backed by science. I just love that because I feel like this is going to help so many people. Like they tell us, set a goal, but they don't never tell us how to do it. And that's what I feel like so many people can't do it, or they give up, or they don't feel like they can do it when we all can do it. We all can make goals. We can all achieve what we want. Number 3 is outcome goals. These are the successful implementations of the process and performance goals. This keeps us in the perspective to stay focused on the bigger picture. So this can be winning a sport, losing the desired amount of weight, scoring a top rank in school, which is like what I'm working on. All 3 of these, I've kind of already in a way stated those in order without giving you a name to them. Like when I talked about if I want to get the highest honors, what do I need to do? What's the process? What's going to help me in tracking my progress? And then what will be the outcome? My advice. I always call it goals within goals within goals. And it just doesn't really keep going because that sounds tedious. But what's my outcome goal? I want to lose, we'll say 30 pounds by graduation. So a good process goal for me is, well, for one thing, it's I want to go to the gym probably 5 days a week, we'll say. And another goal I tell myself is because I can't run on flat surfaces because I have foot issues, I have to get on the elliptical. And I always tell myself my goal is to do 30 minutes on the elliptical. Whether that's walking or running, whether I'm having a good day or a bad day. You show up to the gym, you get on that elliptical for 30 minutes. If you're having a crappy day, you can walk those 30 minutes and still feel good because you still came to the gym. That's creating a habit. And sometimes I realize once I start walking and my body starts to respond, the hormones start to kind of kick in, then I start to feel better, and then I end up like really pushing and doing a lot better than I set out to do. So I always make goals within goals, which is kind of like the process goals and the performance goals of what psychology names them. And I have found that really helpful, and it's really motivated me. And I tell myself in this way, like I said, get on the elliptical. It doesn't matter what you do for those 30 minutes, but you do it. That is way better than saying, oh, you have to go to the gym, you have to push so many weights, or you have to run in such a short amount of time for so many minutes. This way, it's not lenient, but it's kind of lenient, especially when you're starting out. And then once you start to get better, then you kind of start setting your own goals within those goals of, okay, now today I'm going to run so many miles within so many minutes. And then I'll cool down for the rest of the time, the rest of those 30 minutes. Or because I did so well, I'm going to give myself a reward and get off the elliptical and I'll go lift weights. You can kind of measure it to however you are motivated, whatever works for you.
Do it.
My next advice is calendar. And this does not work for everyone. For me, I like to plan things, but I don't like to have a daily to-do list because it's kind of too much for me. But put it on your calendar, set a reminder, set a timer, and stick to it because that is going to help. It will help even the days that you don't feel like doing whatever you're working towards.
Just do it.
When it comes to the podcast, I have a notification that tells me you need to research ideas, or it's time to record, or it's time to edit, or for schoolwork, you have a test due, or you're supposed to go to the gym for 30 minutes, or whatever, be on the elliptical for 30 minutes. I usually go to the gym for an hour, but you know what I'm saying? And that gives you reminders and kind of triggers you in your brain to be like, oh, I need to do that. And if you ignore it, it's kind of on you if you ignore it. I do that too, don't worry. But it does kind of hurt you when you're trying to create habits. Alright, next advice is very obvious. Make it a habit. And how do we do that? And it's way more complicated than we think, and a lot of the processes of the brain are included. So, habit formation is actually the process by which behaviors become automatic. kind of common sense there. But they can actually form without a person intending to acquire them. But they can also be deliberated, cultivated, or eliminated to better suit one's personal goals. So this is both a good and bad thing, because if you are young and you just pick up a cigarette and then a couple hours goes by, you pick up another cigarette, and then you start the habit of smoking cigarettes without deliberately doing it, but then you cultivate it by picking up a cigarette every day, and it becomes a habit. Habits are built through learning and repetition. There's such a thing as muscle memory. If you play any type of musical instrument, a lot of muscle memories into that, or sports even. How you throw a football, how you create it to spiral. You do that so many times, your muscles make it a habit. So even that's kind of an example of even things that we're just trying to do better. We're trying to throw a football better. Well, technically that is a goal, right? We just don't say, oh, that's a goal, because saying it's a goal kind of sounds lame.
But it's not.
Oh, I want to throw a football better. Okay, well, how do I need to position my hand on the football? Like, there's grips on there. Me, I have tiny hands, so I have to slide mine all the way down. Okay, now how do you throw it? And how do you position your hands? How do you move your hands to create it to spiral? If you throw very short, what do you need to do to get your muscles to throw longer? Well, now you need to go work out the muscles, or you need to practice, keep practicing repetition. So that's kind of a fun way of how goals and habits can be formed. When it comes to habits, there's such a thing called a habit loop, and it's a way of describing several related elements that produce habits. So those elements, they have a cue or a trigger, then they have a routine or a behavior, and then there's the reward. The habit loop concept was actually popularized by Charles Duhigg in The Power of Habit. The amount of time needed to build a habit, it really depends on a lot of different factors. So this includes you as the individual and what the intended behavior is. Some habits you might be able to pick up in a matter of weeks. Sometimes researchers even say it can take many months. So do not let that discourage you, especially if someone tells you, oh, it'll only take you a month to create this habit. And here you are sitting a month later and you still don't have that habit. Well, research also says that sometimes it can take many months. When the brain starts to develop a new habit, and as little as a second, a region of our brain, it's called the dorsolateral striatum, it experiences a short burst in activity, and the activity burst increases as the habit becomes stronger. So they actually did an experiment on mice. So at the beginning of the learning process, the neurons in the striata emitted a continuous string of signals, and as the mice's actions started to consolidate into habitual movements, the neurons fired their distinct signals only at the beginning and at the end of the task performed. That's pretty crazy, y'all. More into what happened here, it pretty much shows that when a signaling pattern takes root, a habit has taken shape, and breaking it becomes a difficult endeavor. This is why, like, trying to stop smoking or stop drinking if you're a heavy drinker, especially things that also have addictive chemicals involved, that makes it harder as well. So there's science behind this. There are steps within this. Number one, the neural pathways, they communicate channels in the brain. When a habit is triggered by a cue, kind of like we already said, you have the urge to do that behavior. So if you wake up and you have a habit of showering right when you wake up, that's the trigger, and now the behavior is to shower. So our brain prefers to perform habits because they have existing pathways and known rewards. New behaviors have no neural pathways. Kind of weird, huh? So therefore, you have to deliberately, manually override the typical behavior.
Ain't that insane?
So the more you do, the more the neural pathway, or I should say the baby neural pathway, thickens until it becomes a habit. And then it becomes attached and it becomes used to, and it strengthens those pathways with repetition.
Y'all, this is our brains working. Isn't that fascinating?
Another thing is if you think of the subconscious brain and the conscious brain, the subconscious is the basal ganglia, which is another part of our brain, and it recognizes and repeats patterns until it's taught otherwise. So repetition is like the language of the subconscious brain. The goal in forming habits is to change your brain with repetition. Kind of like what the science has already said. Your brain will actually kind of resist this at first. And I wouldn't even say it's resisting, it's just the fact that the neural pathways aren't there for your brain to communicate and be used to what you're doing. So when we use repetition, we actually create kind of a reward for our brain. Repeating this behavior over time, your subconscious brain will automate it because it loves efficiency. So, and then when you were talking about the brain, the neural pathways, neurotransmitters, they get used to sending those before and after the task. So that's when it becomes automated and it becomes more efficient than continual decision making. Now, next, the conscious brain, which we talked about the prefrontal cortex. It has the ability to actually override the basal ganglia. So it oversees the repeater operations and steps and when something can be done better. So the manager gets tired and stressed.
Right?
And to perform habits, repeat a behavior which teaches the repeater part of the brain to like what the manager wants. Then the repeater carries on the desired behavior. So by repeating your behavior of what you want to do to form a habit, you are training and teaching your brain what you want to do. And like I said, the brain doesn't really like change. And it's also the part about neural pathways not being there. It's not used to what we are trying to change. So this comes with a lot of our own willpower. So if you think about like a mini habit is low willpower, it's kind of in a sense like my friend, she writes a blog about procrastination, which I'm going to give you her source here in a little bit. It's kind of like a Trojan horse that gains easy access into the brain's control room, a low willpower or a mini habit. And so then this disguises the brain's outright rejection of the idea of a 30-minute workout, we'll say. So say you want to just do something like one push-up. And it kind of sounds pathetic, like it's going to lead to nothing. But when you say just one push-up, you're thinking, okay, that's easy. And your brain's like, all right, that's easy enough. And then so you can do one push-up. And then maybe you can do a few more while you're there. And then you're starting to train your brain for repetition. Now, my friend, she writes a blog about procrastination and habits, goals. And her blog is called Put Away Procrastination, and her name is Beth Stern, with an E at the end of Stern. She has done a lot of research and collaborated with others. A lot of her research is very science-based. She is also a Christian woman like myself. So if you do look at her blog, there will be religious things. But yeah, go check out her stuff. So one of my next steps for my own personal advice for goals is have a reward system. I kind of talked about that already. Schedule yourself a massage, take your motorcycle out for a ride, do painting, go to the movies, go spend a night out with your loved one, or go to your friends, host a game night. Kind of do something and get away and reward yourself. I mean, we should kind of be doing that already, but it's also a good reward. Accountability, we talked about that. But for myself, I also do things a little bit differently when it comes to accountability. I have found that social media can be a big accountability place. And in some instances, it can be good or bad. So it really just depends on yourself and your circle. I wouldn't go on Twitter and post my goals because people on Twitter are just hateful. But that's been my experience. But on Facebook, I feel like I have a closer circle. And, well, every year I have a word of the year. I create a word of the year. And then I create goals within of things I want to accomplish through the year. And I pretty much put my outcome goals and everything else I kind of privately do myself. But then every quarter I update and do an update post of how I've been doing. and how I've been meeting my goals. And it keeps me accountable because if I haven't done something, then I have to write in there of, oh, I've kind of not done well at this goal that I have. And so it keeps you accountable. It really does. I don't know. I like that. Not everyone will. Find something that's going to help you. And then lastly, expect hurdles and give yourself grace. Those are very, very big things. I fail at my goals all of the time. Not even joking. So it's really the way you handle the hurdles. Are you going to brush yourself off and get back up and try again or try another day? Or are you going to give up completely? So expect the hurdles. Give yourself grace. We're not all perfect. We're not all going to get to our goals. It's not going to be like a very smooth ride. It's very bumpy. Like, a lot of times I just do not want to go to the gym, or I want to eat chocolate instead of eating fruit. Like, there are decisions we can make to make things better. What are your goals for 2022? Please tell me. And if you need help, I will help you. I will be your accountability partner if you need me to. We can do this together. And I think that's also important. It's about accountability, but it's also more about community. My word for this year is persevere or perseverance. Because I feel like I have done well. Last year was a very challenging year for me. My year for last year was self because I needed to do a lot of things to focus on myself. My health, my social habits, my eating habits. There were so many things that I just had to focus on. This year it's going to be a little bit different. Since I started, it's more of a continuance, and it's continuing to meet those goals with some that are changed. So some of my goals, I do want to lose weight. One of my goals actually is lose 30 pounds by May. I want to graduate with honors. I want to get into my master's program. I want to start my master's program in the fall. I want to have more time for travel this year. And I might get to do that. It really depends on how things work out. But I'm hoping like over the summer I'll get to travel more and just explore. Also set aside more time for myself, my husband, being able to do this. And being able to be a better homemaker. I'm really good at focusing on school and not doing chores. And I kind of need to fix that. So for me, I think a lot of it is time management driven. And I have a lot of work to do, which is perfectly fine. I have the goals in my head, but I haven't written out my plans. Some of them I naturally have plans for, but others I need to actually write out. So that's kind of me. That's kind of what I am striving for. And I hope today that you learn more about goals, how you can create them, how it actually helps your brain, and maybe even how to attain them better. So, I am your host, Katie Gonzalez, and you've been listening to What the Psychology.
Stay psyched, y'all.